Do you hear it? Beautiful. Listen closely to the anthem of your demise.
Through the dark veil of space and time. This is Warp Chatter.
Okay, welcome everybody back again to the Eye of Terror Studios. This is the Warp Chatter podcast. I am your host, Scuffy. This is the podcast for the Horus Heresy Legion's digital card game, Horus Heresy Lore, Warhammer 40,000. This is a podcast by players, for players. With me today, I have several players. I usually have several players, but I have several new players who are new to the podcast. So we're going to be talking about Emperor's Children. But really quick, let me give introductions. We've got Axel Manning, Crab co-host.
It's me, your boy, the crab himself.
We've got Pirate Lahie.
Hey, what's up, boys?
And Lucarionape.
That's it. Hi, I'm Lucarionape.
All right, I just want to make sure I pronounce those both correctly. I always, in my mind, that's how I pronounce them. So.
Yeah, concerning me, I've gave up on people pronouncing my name the right way, so you can just call me Pirate.
Okay, is it Lahie though, or Lahie?
Lahie.
Lahie.
Yeah, technically the real pronunciation is Lahie, but yeah, just Pirate is good.
Pirate's good. I don't think there's any other pirates on the Discord, so.
Just you want to make one for that.
Yeah, no, I'm the only one.
Yeah. All right. Well, welcome. You guys are. I've had you on the necessarily waiting list. I've got it scheduled out for a couple weeks, so we finally got a slot getting in. We're going to be talking about the Emperor's Children primarily on the podcast today, as well as a couple other things. Just recent, not necessarily updates, but just activities and ongoing things that are happening in the community with the game this week. But before we get into all of that, I want to go ahead and give the time, do some player introductions, kind of give you an opportunity to introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about yourself, how long you've been playing, what got you into Legions, anything you want to share, any other games that you play. We'll start with you, Pirate.
All right. Well, first of all, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. I've been a fan of Warhammer 40k for some times now. Not as long as some people, but for at least 6 or 7 years. Really just got into the lore first. Never quite played tabletop, but I got really into the lore because the grimdark aspect, and it's a big universe, right? There's a lot of things going on, so a lot of information. I found it pretty cool, so here I am, and one day I was just scrolling through games that I could play on my phone, and found that game from Legion on the phone, and I was like, this is pretty good. And first of all, I wasn't really playing that much of the game, but then eventually, the pandemic came, and I got more time to play, like more time available to play. So I really got into the community. I eventually got recruited by the masterclass community. I started playing not as long as some of you guys. I started playing during the CAF expansion, which introduced the Wordbearers, Ultramarines, and Orphans of War. So I started around that, joined masterclass community in January 2020, and now I'm in charge of the community. So yeah, that's about it from me, boys.
All right. And the Cult expansion was a good time to get into, as much as, the Ultramarines and the Wordbearers are kind of undersung. I think as an expansion, the Orphans of War were kind of the dark horse, shining there with Branthan and Neerat Kyrene. But I think overall it was a very decent expansion, a little tight, balanced between the three of those things.
Yeah, I think it was quite popular too, because from what I've heard, there was a lot of new players coming in too, because obviously Ultramarines are poster boys of Warhammer 40k. Mm-hmm. So a lot of people were like, "Oh, it looks pretty cool having Ultramarines that game." So yeah, that's probably what happened too.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. All right. And how about you, Luca?
So I've been playing for 2 years now. thereabouts. Before that, I did not play card games. The most recent card game before this was an actual physical copy of Yu-Gi-Oh! And that was about a decade and a half ago now. A very long time ago. I bumped into this game thanks to White Dwarf. They were doing an advertisement for some of the electronic games that were coming out. And I turned the page on it the first time, and I didn't come back for a few months until I picked it up. Decided to go the first few months with no community, then decided, no, I'm going to do an event run with someone. Got picked up for Orion, and now I'm the Lodge Master of Orion, part of the Trader's End community.
All right. Yeah, I think you're the first person that I've talked to that has mentioned the White Dwarf ad. I know that they have had, I think they might have had a second one in that. That's
yeah, so they've had at least two.
Yeah, that's always surprised me how little press coverage or advertising there's been, and I'm sure there are others who are playing because they came across it or they saw it, but there's so many, I know we've talked about it on the podcast before, where there's so many not so great Games Workshop digital games, so some people just eventually kind of just pass on all of those, or the card game format is not something that would normally draw somebody in there. So it's kind of interesting. It's kind of good to hear that there's somebody caught somebody's eye to jump in on the game.
My assumption is that White Dwarf only picked it up because they were doing a bunch of the games at the same time. So they were also doing Freeblade, I think was the other big Warhammer app game. And, they just decided to do a bunch of the online ones. They grabbed the best ones they could find, which included this one. Mm-hmm. And, they moved on.
Okay.
EG, I'm guessing, has to do most of the advertising themselves, which puts some strain on them.
Yeah, and I don't know how much they do. I know we've mentioned that in the Q&As a couple of times where it's asked, like, hey, try get in touch with Black Library. Have you thought about having Games Workshop put up a banner on their website? Or I know they've done cross promotion when it comes for summertime when they do the Skulls for the Skull Throne event. They're part of that. They're on Steam, but they're already a free to download game on Steam, so it's not like there's a whole heck of a lot for them to do. And you'd like to hope that Games Workshop at some point would throw them a bone or let them get plugged on something, but at the same time, I don't know if this is a conversation we had off air or with somebody else on Discord, where it's just like, I think Games Workshop is just kind of okay with, sending their IP out there, having people use it as appropriate, and if it gets some people hooked on the game, they're fine with it. If not, it's not like a loss for them.
So there was an actual analysis of this I bumped across before I found this game, of how Games Workshop does their IP management. And the way they do it is very hands-off, and they just cut everything up. So there's a game that was around, it was called Goblin Tosser or something, and it was literally just, they took the Warhammer Fantasy goblins and put them into a Angry Birds scenario.
Oh, I think it was.
Yeah, you were talking about the advertisement earlier, and I think that's the thing with Warhammer 40k and Game Workshop. Right now, there is so many little games that it's hard for one of those to stand out.
Yeah.
Really, I have some friends that have absolutely no idea about, they don't play Warhammer 40k, they don't know about it. But when I mention it to them, they're like, "Oh yeah, which game you're playing?" There's like 40k games, there's so many of them. It's kind of hard promoting them,
Yeah, and you don't realize that, because it's a brand. It's not just one game anymore. It used to be just the tabletop, but with all the specialist games, there's like 3 or 4 different boxed games. There's Kill Team. There's the video games. There's whether it's on the old platforms, Dawn of War. There are strategy games. There's the card games. There's the Drop Pod Assault, Horus Heresy.
That game.
Yeah, and to go with that
game.
Yeah, and to go with that too, the one thing that Legions has, and I'm trying to remember, I think it was either Hallie or Jay Thrills when they were on initially. One of the things it has going against the game is it's not branded under 40K. It's branded under Horus Heresy. So that's even a special niche within the game itself.
That made it pretty hard for me to find the Space Hulk games because they don't have 40K in their title. And I originally didn't know about the Space Hulk board games, so I was just grabbing 40K games and I would glance past their title because it's just generic Space Hulk.
Right. You're like,
no, they're totally the 40K game.
Right.
Yep.
Interesting. Yeah, I'd like to, at some point, I know we're slowly building listenership and listens out there, so for everybody who is listening, I definitely appreciate it. I'd like to, at some point, have some listening clout, maybe send out an invite to one of the EG folks and see if they're willing to pop on and, whether it's answer questions or just kind of give us a little bit more, behind the scenes peek as far as how they work the IP or how they approach the game. I'd like to do that at some point. That'd be great.
I think you could do it my old font. Oh, we all started talking. I just want my old font back.
I like the new font.
You're wrong.
It's slowly growing on me.
Maybe.
I hate to say it, but it's slowly growing on me.
I hate to say it's completely replaced my memories of the old font. I don't remember what the old font looks like. I just want it back.
Yeah, it was very weird at first when they introduced that, but yeah, I think you could find someone to talk with, that's from EG, and if I remember correctly, LCFR even did some talking with them voice to voice before, so you could definitely get one of those on the podcast, I think, if you're a bit lucky.
Yeah, that'd be good. I'll have to look into that and send out some lines, especially after we get through this next expansion, which is up and coming. Talking about new stuff, yesterday the new event, which I'm not sure because we don't have a Q&A scheduled yet. Typically, in what Everguild does is they'll have that Q&A where they make the announcement for when the new expansions coming. They usually do that like a week or so ahead of time. So I don't know if the new expansion will be after this event or after the event that follows it. But we've got Intrusion of Aldrich, which I like that's just a blurb of a short story in one of the series where it's kind of Loken and Act and Cruz working as the knights errant, travel to Caliban. How they travel to Caliban's a little unclear, but they travel to Caliban to try to suss out Luther and the Dark Angels there, what their motives are, if they're going to be allies or not, because they really haven't heard anything from Caliban. They kind of come to the conclusion that Caliban's on its own, and that's how the story ends up going. Cypher working as kind of an unexpected ally with Loken and Cruz. But the event is based off of that. And these two rewards that we've got here, I'm going to talk about just a little bit here briefly. Inner Sanctum is the name of that the card is going to be regardless of which side wins. The Loyalist side allows for heal 5 to both warlords. And then the Chaos side allows for a choose one trooper tactic in the enemy hand and return it to the deck, and both players draw a card. Both of those would cost 2 energy. One is a legendary, one is an epic, which would allow you to have 2 copies of that in your deck. What are your guys' thoughts on those?
Well, for one, I'm very satisfied with the Chaos reward if we get this one. I think it's really good and would give a lot of decks some more flexibility with draws, because the concept is very interesting. Just one warlord that, has been suffering lately ever since his nerf is Kabanda. Well, it wasn't his nerf, actually, was the lead, his card pool nerf. Inner Sanctum is very good for aggro decks. It makes you draw a card, and it actually will give you the opportunity to take something in your opponent's hand and, make it back into the fucking deck. That's great.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like that. That's an option. That's one of those not necessarily feature mechanic, but it is a style of play that exists in other games, the hand manipulation, and I was really hoping to see it in like maybe Dark Angels or something, kind of just in my mind, like the way they've got their secret order, not necessarily secret orders, but their inner circle. I thought that would be a good feature as far as hand manipulation, returning cards to their hand, forcing you to redraw. So your hand is never guaranteed, and maybe that would be too powerful if that was an entire focus of a faction. Maybe that would be just too disruptive. But I like that because there are just those key turns where, you know, you might want to play normally you play something like Edict or you know, a orbital bombardment of salamanders, something that would raise the cost of tactics, but instead you could play a 2-cost card, draw a card. Instead of raising the cost of a card, just put a card back, and they might not be able to get that card, whether that is a troop, a high-cost troop that you don't want to see come out the next turn, or a high-cost tactic like Desperate Defense. I like that.
For me, I'm praying to put the Harrowing back in that man's deck, and I don't have to worry about that for another little bit.
Yeah, put back those finishers. I like the Chaos one better than the Imperial one, too.
Oh, yeah. The Imperial one's so niche, I don't see it even... Oh, you extend the game a little bit. Cool.
I think
the Chaos one will be cool. Sorry, I cut you off.
No, I was interrupting. I think the thing that kills the Imperial one for me is that it's a legendary. If it was if it was a common, an epic, or a rare, it would be more useful, especially in decks where I would be able to then extend the game explicitly because I want to get to the later cards. Whereas, because it's a legendary, I'm only going to be able to use it once. It's a 2-cost card, it's only once in my deck. I'm not going to be able to play it consistently. I can't make a deck relying on it.
Yeah.
I didn't even see its rarity. I thought it was an epic as well. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's really no reason to go for the Imperial one this time around, boys.
No.
On top of that, the Chaos one has the advantage of showing you, I'm going to assume like they normally do, 3 cards from the enemy hand. Which means that not only are you removing 1 card, you now know what 2 of the other cards are.
Right.
Which means you can actually build your hand or your field a bit.
Yeah, it offers kind of the same advantage that Airman's special does, right? Because his special lets you get a copy of their card, reduce its cost, but you're also seeing 2 other cards in their hand, and sometimes that factors into your decision too. You're like, oh, he's got a hard removal and he's got a big troop. Well, why would I copy that big troop if he's got the hard removal? I'll just take the hard removal, you know. And if the same thing, you're taking a look at 3 cards in their hand, maybe you send back that hard troop and you let him keep his hard removal, but then you bait it out, you know, because you can work around it. Or you don't, you just say, hey, you know, I'm going to take the chances, I'm going to throw back that hard removal, and I know that at some point he's going to play that troop. So, yeah, I agree, there's bigger advantages there. Having 2 copies of that is sweet. I really think that can work with a lot of decks, like whether it is aggro decks, which I think can definitely take advantage of that, or it is, you know, some control decks. Even mid-range has got that option where it just might be as a one-of. But just to kind of in certain matchups, that could really make or break a game.
Yeah, and it still, you know, makes your opponent wrong. So it's just not positive. It's, you know, like, it's not just completely broken as a card.
Right.
Like, at least if you would draw a card and the opponent wouldn't, like, it would be really strong. But it's still decent, you know.
Yeah, you're not shutting them down now. Now, granted, I mean, if we end up seeing the same random stuff sometimes where, like, you toss back, like with Edict of Censure, you wipe their entire hand of tactics out, and the first card they draw is the one tactic.
God.
That's still a possibility.
I've seen that happen way too many times. You're playing against an Engram, you drop a few troops there, you Edict is in, and then he draws back Conqueror.
Yeah.
That's just
classic every time. Yeah. It's still a possibility, but let's hope that this works decently well.
I would say, though, that these cards are going to be very easily nerfed if they're 2 present, and that's their energy cost. I can see it being useful at 2, possibly at 3, not at 4.
Right? Yeah, I agree. The 4 energy for such a minor at that point for affecting 1 card, or 4 energy to heal 5, I don't think would make it justifiable or worthwhile. 2 to 3, I think, is a fair cost. And if you needed to change it, you know, if it was really seeing that much play, I think they would just up the energy by 1. I don't think the ability of either is terrible. I actually think, you know, subconsciously, I think the Imperial one is only looking decent, or not decent, but looks a little bit more attractive, because the recent changes to the whole Reckoning and the Whispers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So those Primarchs
That's
losing
like my
that extra,
Constantine.
yeah, losing that 3 extra health, and for 2 energy I can heal 5 and draw it out, but it's just not, it's not comparable. I like the Chaos one better. All right, well, with that, we're talking about the event. Something else that's coming up here in about 3 days, the World Cup. Signups will have ended. So by the time that this podcast is airing, for those who are listening, the World Cup qualifiers will be underway, and that'll be for teams, that'll be for countries who have had more than 3 players sign up. So for those countries who've had only 3 players or less sign up, they'll get their team paired up. I think the tournament organizer is going to pair up regionals. So if there's a couple countries who only have 1 player, they'll be paired as 1 team. But for those teams who have multiple players, there'll be qualifier tournament to figure out what 3 players will go on to represent those. So I haven't taken a look at a total count for the signups for each country. I do think the European continent has got the biggest sign up by far on that, which makes sense. I mean, you got a lot of Eastern Europeans, Russian, France, Italy, UK. There's a lot of players signed up to play on that, so there will probably be a few qualifiers running for a bit, and players are still right now making their Warlord choices for that qualifier series, and then after the qualifiers concluded, then they'll make their choices for what Warlords are going to be taken into the World Cup tournament itself. So at that point, I'll probably either, I'm not sure if I'll have, a player team on or a TO on, but I like to do a breakdown for what Warlords we're seeing. Now, Pirate, I saw that you're signed up for Team Canada, or to play for Canada. Did you sign up, Axel?
I didn't sign up. I was tempted, but, I probably won't.
There's not a lot of players in Canada playing right now. If my memory is not failing me, I'm pretty sure it's 5 or 6 guys. I think it's 5. I know I think I know all of them, and they're all really good players. So whatever the team we end up with, I'll be very happy that those guys, represent the country. Yeah,
it looks like a good team. I know Shay. I talked to Shay a little bit. I think
coming out swinging, boys.
Last week, and he might end up being too busy with school at the time, so he might have to pull out of that. So that might actually, I think there's 5, so that would drop it to 4. So you guys just have to figure out who that 3rd player is going to be. But it looks like a decent team, and I'm looking for. I think we've got about 12 players for the USA, so we're going to have a series to play for that. And there's a lot of good players there too. Some new names, or names I haven't seen before, which is nice too. I think that's great. People either catching wind of the series and want to play, or have probably been keeping an eye on it. And just the last time we had a World Cup was over a year ago. So yeah, I think Mr. Midnight, he's in Trader's End, and the other day he was asking, it's like, where did this Blood Games card back come from? Like I'm seeing that. I'm like, oh yeah, that's from the World Cup. Like, he's like, oh, okay. And then he signed up like the next day or something like that.
Guy wanted the card back.
He wants to go for the card back. And I think there's only 3 people on the Germany team. I think he's one of them. So, yeah. I thought that was fun.
The further east you get in Russia, the further east you get in Europe until you hit Russia, the amount of players dwindles. And then it just blows up once you hit Russia.
It's a lot. That's a huge player base. And
I know the countries around Hungary, there's so little players, they had to form under one team, to which the user Doles, he's a pretty big player in the community, really is adamant about calling the team Greater Hungary, to the dismay of his teammates.
Oh, God. Yeah, it's really like that. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that's around 140 players that signed up so far, which is pretty good for a big tournament like that. And yeah, I think maybe 25% of that, maybe more, are Russians.
Yeah.
It's just a lot of people there.
So many Russians.
And they've always been a very big, I think the biggest player size when you actually break it down by continent. That was something that's seems to always have been represented when there was Q&As and the devs are kind of given their data as far as where people are playing from. That's the majority of it. And I think that makes sense that there be so many players. up for it. I'm actually glad to see that because I know, sometimes the language barrier can be a thing. The signups are on the Discord, which is generally English-speaking thing, but that was not necessarily a huge barrier for the first World Cup, and it's not another barrier the second go-around either. So it's just good to see everybody who can get on and who wants to participate able to do so. It should be really neat to see.
That's it. We're declaring war against Russia, boys.
Yeah, it's going to be a fun tournament, and yeah, I don't know, but probably most countries, most teams will be able to finish their qualifiers within maybe 1 or 2 weeks. But I expect Russia to take the full months, probably.
Yeah, there's enough players there where that's probably going to take, unless because I think Doles is. I don't know if he's going to be different for each, or not Doles, Gray Fox, if he's going to do it differently for each one, or if he's just going to be like, here's qualifiers at single elimination, or if he's going to do double elimination. But I think most of them can be done within, like you said, a week or two.
Yeah, I think it would be only fair for smaller teams, like smaller countries that only have a lot of players. Would be more fair if you get to play a bit more than just one opponent.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Because if I take the example of Canada, so let's say we end up being 4, I feel like it wouldn't be fair if we just play one another one time and that's it. Like I feel like I should play at least everyone one time. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, get some games in. At least feel like, hey, not only did you get to play, but you had a little bit more of a chance to, whether it's to make the team or not, versus like you've got a 24 players to play off. You can kind of make single elimination make more sense in that regard.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, you want the best players on the team because you want to win, right? You want your country to win. So, I would feel bad to, if you're Russia, well, it's a bad example because there's a lot of people, but let's say you're in a country you only have 5 sign up, and you have like the obvious good player that's been War Master many times or top 50 many times. The guy's really good and then ends up having a shit draw for his game and lose just as of that. That would kind of suck.
Exactly, yeah. So it kind of helps even out that fluke possibility. And I think too. I mean, depending on I would imagine all the players would probably be okay with that as a small group because it benefits everybody. It benefits the whole team, like I said, to get the best player, and at the same time, they would all get a better experience out of it. So, yeah, curious to see how that's going to go.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. I can't wait. Those types of big tournaments is what makes the community, more active into the game. It's just more fun.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. I agree. All right. Well, speaking of fun, the topic of the hour is the Emperor's Children. And the Emperor's Children, I think I've always had fun playing. They've had their highs and lows. They're not for everybody, but I think they're very, I say beginner friendly, but they're just a very good faction for people to step into. And then outside of that, they are probably one of the, one of the big 4 or 5 traitor legions within the scope of the Horus Heresy, within the scope of Warhammer 40k. The Noise Marine is one of the most iconic things. Slaanesh is one of the 4 greater, the gods of chaos. So this is a faction devoted to following that singular god, and those factions that have got one deity that they follow always seem to get a little bit more shine than the ones that follow Chaos Undivided. So I want to talk about the Emperor's Children. I want to talk about a little bit about their lore, what it is, what that you guys like or dislike about them, the Primarchs. We talk about the cards, whether it's the perfection mechanic, your favorite tactics, favorite warlords, least favorite stuff. Just kind of break it all down for the next hour. So let's do it.
Yeah, I mean, it's a really it's a faction I like playing because it can allow for some crazy plays, some crazy combos. The perfection mechanic is something that is really fun, and although I agree with you, it is something that is really good and is beginner friendly. I think mastering them is a complete other thing. It's really hard to master them.
Yeah, I agree. Because the perfection mechanic is just one aspect of it, but there are so many ways to play the warlords and to juggle them and use some of those cards in conjunction. If you just look at the faction pool, you see, generally some decent cards. There's some good ones and there's some average ones, but some of those cards, when they're used appropriately or when you get the jump up on things, can turn a game around on its own sometimes, whether it's a tactical brilliance into a large tactic play with Saul, or it's a hold at all costs. If you've paired that right and you hit perfection a couple times in the same turn, or it's just something solid like hidden, a Sardarian Terminators, and then they just recently got the that new addition to the game, the Frenzied Assault. Is that the one? The
tree tree? No.
You mean the 2 energy give battle honor act again?
Yes, yeah.
Onslaught? Something Onslaught? What is the name of that card?
What is
neutral, Imperial.
It is called
Fierce Onslaught.
Fierce Onslaught.
Yeah, I was close.
Yes. You throw that with those guys who've got, Battle Honor Shield already, and then they get the Battle Honor to act again. They could clear a whole board if they're stacked enough, or jacking them up with Unbreakable Focus. There's just so much there. There really is. There really is a lot to, like you said, they're hard to master. They're fun to play. Lucius can be deadly, but
yeah, I think the recent card Forbidden Protocol is like, this is a card that really is very good with Emperor's Children. Like, just so many things you can do with that. I mean, it's pretty nasty that you can drop, the Relinor and the bikes, and drop Forbidden Protocols on the bikes. If you get just a bit of energy manipulation with Orvis Lighters and drilling sites, you can do some really amazing stuff.
Yeah, and they've got so many good vehicles too. Like just Relinor and the bikes, there's 2 of them, but they've got Agdaman. They've got the Tiberian bikes, which is the 3 energy bikes with sneak attack already on them.
They got them 6/6s at perfection, become 8/8s.
Yeah, the
have a Rylanar before that. That's a 10/10.
The Dreadnoughts.
Forbidden Protocol.
And then you've got game over stuff.
Yeah. The big Titan.
Yeah, they've got the 10/10 Titan that somehow Tarvitz can get out. Sometimes it's 6 energy or 7 energy.
Subjugator? Oh yeah, Subjugator Forbidden?
Yeah. With the Cleave 10 and Shield, and I mean, Forbidden Protocols is a legendary, so it's a 1 card, and for those who don't have it, we talked a little bit about that last episode. It's an insanely awesome card. It gives anywhere between +1/+1 to +3/3 or +2/+2.
+3/3, I think.
And then they also get
it's
+2/+2.
+2, but then it can give like Zinch or something.
Then it gives a Mark of Chaos, which has buffs in of itself, and then it has a chance of giving Bloodthirst, Ward, Survivor, Flank, and I think there's one more that it can give, right?
It's Survivor, Bloodthirst, Flank, and Ward.
And Ward, okay.
And if it has Mark of Chaos already, it's a Demon Host, isn't it?
Which is the same, it gains one of those benefits automatically, or not automatically, but has it.
It gains a Demon Host-like.
Yeah.
It doesn't become...
It could gain multiples of those. It could gain Ward and Bloodthirst. It could gain Survivor and Ward. It's 6, so you throw that on a vehicle that is either buffed up or survived on your following turn. You throw that on your Tiberan bikes that have got the fast, and they're coming out as a 5, and then somehow you use it either a drill sight, or you already use a tactical brilliance and Salt Tarvitz, and then all of a sudden you've got this nasty 5/3 bike that's been beefed up, so it's probably even faster and gnarlier. And that's just 2 cards, but
yeah,
it's not like they're. It's not like the bikes are not bikes that are not included in the deck. I mean, the Emperor's Children make very, very good use of vehicles, whether it is playing a Desperate Defense build or it's just using the Emperor's Children cards to good effect.
So, I'd just like to interrupt here, because we've been talking a lot about the legendary and the epic combinations. But the thing I find the most interesting about the Emperor's Children is the fact they've got, in my opinion, some of the best common and rare cards in the game. Notably, to me, there's Tiberilon bikes, Unbreakable Focus, Longinus, Itakin Squad, Mycalus Jet bikes, Eudysus Squad, Perfection's Flight, Agnamin, Noise Marines. I could make a deck out of all just them. Thodorian as well is just as good, if not better, sometimes than Sardaron Terminators.
Yeah, and the Thodorian is a common. They are, and that's the thing. Like, that's one reason why I liked them when I started playing. They were not, obviously, the first faction I played was the Sons of Horus, but they were, the Emperor's Children was the next faction I played once I got a different warlord. I got Fabius Bile, and at the time there were only 3 warlords. Lucius wasn't even a warlord then; it was just Tarvitz, Fulgrim, and Bile. And Bile's ability was not as good as it is now, and that's. You say that, and you might think, well, that actually sounds like it's... I mean, how could that be? He had the potential to give benefits, but there was also like a 50-50 chance that he would stun his own troop that he buffed up. So,
good old days.
Yeah, so there was nothing more frustrating.
Quotation.
Yeah, they're like, I'm going to buff up this guy. Oh, and he's stunned. It was like a gamble, like a big gamble to play. So just having access to the cards, the real thing that would win the game for me 9 times out of 10 would be peak condition on a very large troop, or having the stun with the Eidichin squad, which is one of my favorite cards in the faction. That 4-drop perfection, deal 2 damage and stun, or deal 2 damage, perfection, stun the target as well. Just having those cards, and then I think my first legendary at the time was Lucius as a troop, which was nothing like Eidolon. Lucius as a troop was essentially he had that ferocious assault. He was like a 9/9, or he was a 7/7 battle honor act again. So I would throw peak condition on him, pump him up to like a 10/10. He'd clear the board, and then he'd hit the opponent's warlord before everybody had hard removal. Game has changed considerably since then, and I think really you could make a case that you don't need to have half those legendaries or epics, but like you said, yeah, they've got great commons and great rares.
And to tie that all in, they probably have the best rare warlord of the bunch, Sol Tarvitz.
Yeah.
He just takes what the Emperor's Children is great at, which is playing around the energy curve and just ramps it up to 11.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, he's really good. I mean, it's obvious that right now, if you want to play at a very high level in the current meta, Sol Tarvitz does this job very well. Just because of Desperate Defense, this is just really strong for him.
Yeah, being able to bring that
Desperate
in
Defense
at such an early time, like before your opponent can respond to it. They might have enough energy to drop 1 troop that might deal with that, but if you're doing a Desperate Defense and you drop 2, and you're lucky enough to get ones that have got like shield with them, it's ridiculous.
So,
It's insane.
hypothetically, you can drop a Desperate Defense on the free energy turn? If you,
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Which is just insane.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you've got so many cards in your deck, you're more likely to get the not very useful cards out, and something to remember about Perfection. Pardon me, I'm stuttering or mumbling. Something to remember about Perfection is that if you put it in play through a card effect, you're not going to trigger the Perfection effect itself, which removes some of the value in definitely the later higher tier units outside of, well, Subjugator Titan and the Iron Column. So yeah.
No, he's really strong, and I feel like the other warlords, Fulgrim is a bit... The only thing I dislike a bit about Fulgrim is that he's either going to generate very good stuff or very bad stuff.
Yeah.
And that can be just like a momentum killer. Like those few first turns are critical, and one of the deck I built with Forbidden Protocol, instead of, just having no low-cost troops, I decided that instead of generating cards that often turns out to be useless, I feel like dropping those small troops that gives you perfection and working towards getting that whisper can be really useful and make you win the games. Having board early with Fulgrim is better, in my opinion, than generating troops, generating cards, tactics.
Yeah,
I'd agree.
You have to take a look at his tactics. Go ahead.
I was going to say that most of Fulgrim's tactics, to me, are more useful in the late game, where a 4 energy deal free damage is actually more useful to me than wasting it in the early game. a hard removal at any time, even if it's 6 energy, so you'd play it in the 8 energy turn if you generate and then play. It's a good card, especially because you get to draw a card if you're doing that. And then, obviously, you have Pride of the Emperor, which is just one of the best battleship cards in the game.
What, you're telling me you don't want an early game hand of just Erwan, the 3 energy, return a friendly troop to your hand?
Damn.
It's
That or
Ruined
I think it's
Palace.
concentrated fire. Every time I get this card, I cringe.
Ruined Palace is the one that irks me the most, and even that's even following the chaos buffs. I just can't stand it.
Palace would be a troop. Nope.
It
I mean, if
costs-
Palace was a troop, it'd be replacing Hall of Rights.
Yeah,
Oh, definitely. It's
Yeah.
just like the title of it. I always thought they were the same card when I just glance over the Legion.
yeah, but it's
Okay.
to your storage troops, and like we talked about, there's so many vehicles. So half the time, when you could play it, you're like, oh, wait a minute, that's not going to give anything to any of my troops because they're all vehicles.
And this is, I think, the thing we've forgotten up until now. Though the card pool themselves have a lot of very good cards, there are just as many cards that will never see the light of day in a competitive deck.
Oh yeah,
Be that because the other cards are too strong, or because their concepts themselves are flawed.
yeah.
Ruined Palace.
Forbidden Palace,
Ruined Palace,
Larity
Enhanced
Squad,
Warrior.
Enhanced Warrior. There was a time when I thought Enhanced Warrior was good when I started playing. Before
On
I
paper,
got
it
other
looks pretty
cards.
okay.
It's-
Serious Rhino. I've never used that thing.
I've seen it used in events, but that's just about it.
I have
And
some-
only in events.
I had someone drop it against me the other day, and I just kind of paused for a minute and went, okay then.
It's, yeah, it's surprising too because, and I think you kind of said that earlier. Manipulating the cards and stuff. I'm surprised that there is nothing yet with a discard. Like a discard mechanic in game, and where you get like a graveyard basically where all your dead units go, and Enhanced Warrior would work like boost itself +1/+1 for every troop in your graveyard. That
Right.
way would be viable.
Yeah.
The closest thing we got is the Blood Angel tactic, where we'll remember the troops that died during the game. That's the closest we'll ever get, so far at least.
Yeah. Or you've got you've got a couple like Father Decay can pull the graveyard out, but in terms of like if this card isn't in your hand, you're not gonna. It's not by the time you draw it, it could be completely useless for the cost that it is. We're talking about the Enhanced Warrior. I mean, Jesus, it's a 6 energy card for a 2/3 troop, and it only gains.
Assuming you top deck it.
Yeah, exactly, and it only gains +1/+1 when an enemy dies. And if you're playing against mono warlord decks, you have a 2/3 troop that's going to cost you 6 energy. There's no reason to include this in your deck. It's terrible.
There's not. If it gets jam, it's just the worst. It's just
You know stuff you don't understand. You'll gain a 1/1 from that speeder that hits you in the face from the Angron, and that's it.
No, that's it. Yeah, you take 10 damage, but it was worth it for him to become a 3/4.
Just to illustrate how bad this card is, the Alpha Legion has an equivalent style
Ghost
card
Legionary.
called Ghost Legionary. 3 energy, 2 attack, 3 defense. Gain +1/+1 when your opponent draws a card. Now that's a lot easier to do with the Alpha Legion because they have so much which forces the draw.
Mm-hmm.
The Emperor's Children has nothing which really forces the enemy to die consistently.
Or to play troops. Like, they just don't play them. They just don't play them.
I feel like the only thing that makes it look good on paper is that it gets to sit in your hand and gain these buffs. It doesn't have to sit on board. But then, at the same time, do you really want a 6 energy that's going to sit in your hand the entire game that you can't play until a certain amount of troops die for it to be valuable?
Exactly.
What I would like to see is it is changed in line with what they did for the Dark Angels, where the card effects can be procced from the deck. So if an enemy troop dies whilst it's in the deck, it will start buffing itself.
Yeah, or similar to
and that
we've
way
seen
I
with
would
some Iron
guarantee the
Warriors
6 energy
cards.
cost is valuable.
Yeah,
For me, I would just like to see it switch to when a unit dies.
when a unit dies,
Maybe even up the top.
would be decent. At least that way, if your stuff is dying, it's contributing to that too. Just in the way that Devour of Worlds has got its cost reduced when a troop dies. You could have the same thing for the Enhanced Warrior, where when your troop dies, it's kind of like it's not impossible. The game has got the code to show that exists. It just has been a card that has been completely forgotten, and I don't think, aside from the art update when they changed the artwork for this thing, I don't think there's been a reason for anybody to go back and like take a look at it. Like if you just scroll past it, because right next to its Perfections Flight and Agdaman, there's no reason to look any further on that row.
You can just ignore it.
I'm not gonna lie, before you guys brought that card up, I completely forgot it even existed.
I mean, it's even worse for Sirius Rhino, right? Well, not right next to it, but to its left.
Yeah. For a 4/6, and then it's a 4/6 that for 0, your next Astartes cost 2 less. That's not a bad ability, but it's not great. And
I mean, it's the same ability that's used in the Dark Angels for Israfel.
Mm-hmm.
But it's for Israfel, it's reduced by 2 the cost of troops from that wing in your hand. So you could multiple troops.
Exactly. Yeah. Yep.
What gets me with that one especially is it lowers the cost in a Legion that wants to play around the energy curve and drain all their energy in one quick go to activate bonuses. It's like, oh, use it and you won't be able to activate this one. Have fun, buddy.
Yeah, because that is a problem with them. It's a danger is lowering your stuff too much, where then you can't play that perfection. If you're playing the classic Emperor's Children on curve.
My third deck was either a Tarvitz or a Bile deck, and it had both Enhanced Warriors and Sirius Rhinos in them. I can tell you now, I only played Enhanced Warriors once, and they were never buffed past a 5/6. And Sirius Rhino was not touched, other than maybe once, and in that case I used its attack and not its ability.
Yeah,
these 2 cards are worthless.
Once I got Noise Marine in my collection, that replaced the Sirius Rhino in my Emperor's Children builds when I was playing at the time. I was like, this is a better card. Like, on stats, it's got less health, but it does so much more. It stuns, the unit and the ones adjacent to it, and it can attack for 5. What's not to like?
I feel like if they gave Rhino frontline, it would see just a little more use. Not enough to actually warrant it useful, but at least I can hide behind it.
I mean, you can play with supply lines. Like you can do something with it, but it's just not worth the, doing. You're not going to build your deck around that card.
No. Especially as the game exists now with all the cards that are out there. I mean, just within the Emperor's Children faction, there was always Tactical Brilliance. Tarvitz's ability has pretty much been long-standing. It wasn't always the way it is now, but I mean, for the majority of the game, it's always been the same ability. But the game has added other things. It's added the abandoned supplies, it added Tactical Brilliance, it added War Room. I mean, there's so many other things to manipulate and tweak your curve, how you build your deck, and if you've got certain key cards that you want to get out sooner, there's ways to do it. And relying on a meh troop to survive, to use it for one type of troop type, not even for your next troop, your next Astartes. It's just, I think the game itself, the meta and the other cards in the neutral card pool has surpassed that card by far.
The only way I could see its use is as a replacement for the Mechanicum card Drilling Sites. And only then if you have a bunch of the 2 energy troops such as Raytherin Platoon or Severin Squad or Biovocalist Squad. Because there you would be able to play your full energy card and then proc the ability and drop Severin or those troops and get their perfection again. But that is the only way, and I have to deliberately be looking for a reason to use this card to think of this.
Well, and that's just it. Then you get into the whole, like, that's your purpose of playing the deck. Is that even, I mean, you can do it. Is that going to win you anything? At that point, at that stage in the game, if you're at 6-7 energy, if playing a bunch of 2-3 health troops, is that going to do you much? I don't know. I mean, it's possible. It totally is with some of the troop buffs that are out there, Unbreakable Focus, or if you've got a Hall of Rights down and you throw down troops that are getting Marks of Chaos. But if that's your goal, just to do it, it can be done. But I don't think it can be done consistently, or it's not a good way to try to end the game for the Emperor's Children.
Yeah, something I'm kind of sad that they missed the opportunity of doing is adding the actual Sword of Fulgrim as an artifact.
Yeah,
just doing that would have give Lucius more, kind of a more play style to him. Because right now he's like the only warlord out of the trees that doesn't have anything going for him, and being 30 HP.
Yeah, I think...
Hold at no cost the card when Lair Blade isn't even in there.
Yeah, I think as far as talking warlords, and we can get into this next, I mean, because we've really talked about the cards, but the warlords drive the focus of the deck. You mentioned the Fulgrim, doing the perfection. Tarvitz obviously is, I think, personally, I think he's the best one. He's always been consistent. Fulgrim has got his highs and lows, depending. I feel like consistency with Tarvitz is nice despite the 30 health. Bile can be random in terms of whether or not he works. If you get your stuff in stealth and your opponent doesn't break it, he can get crazy, but that's not guaranteed. And if your opponent sees you playing Bile, then there's certain cards that they're going to hold for, they're going to look for to use against you, whether that's stun or the hard removal or the stealth removal, whatever the tactic is. There's a couple different ways to deal with that. Lucius is one of those ones where I think he really, his heyday was probably with the Extermination expansion with Alpha Legion and Night Lords and Iron Warriors. And as I know LCFR was playing him a lot, I was playing Alpharius at the time, and every time I faced Lucius, he was like the perfect counter to Alpha Legion, which was, the faction everybody was complaining about. His lethal range, just like Corswain is now, got higher as the game went on, and he had access to cards like Concentrated Fire, Tactical Brilliance, Pride of the Emperor. He could really pinch it out and eat the game, and 30 health wasn't too bad. But as the game has progressed now, you've got a Corswain who has 35 health and has got almost the same ability. Well, actually, I mean, he's got the same ability. Let's be honest. He's got the same ability. He just doesn't have the battle honor. And then he's got that additional card that gives him +2 in first strike. So it's like Corswain is better. Yeah, there's a different card pool there, but side by side, these two warlords who are duelist warlords who have a very almost tit for tat war ability don't play the same at all. And Lucius is a very fickle beast. You can win with him, but it's not easy.
He's very meta dependent about being good or not. Like, depending on what people play, he will either be really good or really bad, and that's just how it is with him. And when you check Fabius Bile, the only thing I really dislike about Fabius Bile is that there is, if you don't get that really early turns buff on your troop, you're gonna have a hard time, because it's really hard to come back with him. Just like Lehman Ross and all those draw dependent warlords.
Yes, yeah, exactly. Because you could, if you put all your eggs in one basket, if you drop your Romu, your drill sight, you pump up that Romu, and you don't get a decent sizable buff, it's like, now it's a 3/3. Okay, well, I'll have to do that again on my next turn, and maybe it becomes a 5/5, but by then, my opponent's got some stuff on the board, so I'm not comfortable using it, and then by the time I use it, they hard destroy it, and all I've got left are other cheap stealth units and vehicles, and he doesn't buff all of them. He can only buff one at a time. So yeah, it's very easy for him to miss that. It's nice when it hits, but it's not guaranteed.
Yeah, exactly. That's what makes, a warlord being, as we call, meta. It's being versatile and being able to, come back into games. And Fabius Bile just does not do that.
Mm-hmm.
Fabius Bile does not scream meta. He screams bigger slot machine than Alpha Legion traps.
Oh, he screams Van Boning pulling up some incredible stuff and funny screenshot, but that's about it,
Correction. He screams, "I am the best swordsman," and then face smacks himself into a frontline 9/9.
That's fair. So that's about right. And and Lucius, I've seen Wintermold use him and do top 50 with him maybe 6 months ago. But, I haven't seen Lucius in a while now.
Yeah. When you see him usually from somebody who says, why does this guy not do what Corswain does? That's what I'm seeing him right now. I played him, let's say a month or two ago in practice. I did about, look at the game here, I got about 11 games, more than a 50%, but it wasn't great, and it was really tedious. And I think I was playing him to practice for like a Barnet Legions, if I remember correctly. Had some fun games, like if I got stuff going and I had, I could squeeze out some wins with concentrated fire and just like time things right. But those were hard. Those were really tricky games where I had to have all the pieces played just right, and there was no room for error, which is really frustrating. Because there's so few warlords where that is. Like there's some warlords that just have a hard time. But the room for error shouldn't be on, my opponent is playing the counter to it, or it's got the answer to what it's got. Like, the room for error is as a player. And I think probably Lehman Russ is the closest I could compare it to, because Lehman Russ can be devastating when he comes out. If you get his pack off, and he can combo, and he can just deal so much damage. But there's so much math involved in that sometimes you have to watch it, and you have to, like, count it, because there's been times where with Lehman Russ, like if you don't count right, like you missed your opportunity to go into Reckoning, or you overextended yourself. You didn't have enough to cause lethal. You're short by 2, and then your opponent has got the option to wipe things out. Like, it's just such a razor's edge, and there's so few warlords. And I don't think, for Lucius especially, that it should fall on the Emperor's Children player to walk that line so much. And I think that's really a big weakness.
Yeah, I agree with you.
If we want to float suggestions on how to fix Lucius,
I want to see a special card.
I would either see a special card, or I would actually go towards what Calidus does. So Lucius, for those who don't know about the lore, which is very unlikely, whenever he's killed, his soul possesses his killer and then turns them into him. So I would be interested in seeing either a survivor mechanic or a mechanic where you can steal the enemy's troops.
Oh, what would be nice? If a troop hits you for lethal, you become that troop.
It can only work once or twice.
That would be pretty funny.
But it would be a nice and interesting change to a warlord that has not been treated... Well, when was the last time you received an update? When was the last time the Emperor's Children received an update?
Well, the Emperor's Children received an update. It wasn't... Fulgrim got the update, but Lucius didn't. It was way back when they changed Sardarian Squad and the Eudicius Squad, and there was one other card in there that I know they changed. Oh, Eidolon. They changed Eidolon as well. Here's my suggestion. I would give him a 2 energy purple card. Gains +1 this turn, gains +1 this turn, and for this turn gains battle honor, heal 3.
I could see that work.
Yeah, that could be devastating against some warlord. Yeah. You could heal a lot with that. Yeah. That would be interesting.
Yeah,
not completely broken and interesting.
Yeah, exactly. Like, it gives him an option to respond. Because, as much as his battle honors can act again, that's great, but that can also kind of wear him down. But if you are late game, it gives you a little bit of edge to deal some extra damage, or to chew through some front line without losing as much health. It doesn't give him 5 extra health. It doesn't give him survive or anything, but it gives you that option for that one turn where you're always deadly. You have the option to always be deadly.
So you're saying that, and you're suggesting this card as a late game option, but we're talking about hypotheticals now, I know, and we're moving off topic. But anything that deals like this, I think, would actually be more useful to Lucius in the early game.
It could be,
Most of the Emperor's Children cards, or warlords right now, tend towards the late game. Making Lucius the early game warlord with this battle honor hypothetical of heal something would mean that he would have the incentive to try and take control of the board early on through the use of the face bash.
It would it'd be very similar to Ron.
Soltorvitz is pretty early now. He's not like game anymore, or at least the way people play him, you're going to get... Most of the games are going to be over by turn 5.
I think having a Lucius that has a one-turn option to be ROM 2.0 would be nice, but I think Lucius's big thing, because Lucius's lethal range late game is still his upsell. Like, if you've got your opponent down to 7 or 8 health, and you've got 8 energy, you could potentially, if you've got the right cards in hand, you could take him out. you've got to get him there. And at that point in the game, especially right now, the way the game is, the decks and warlords are starting to drop bigger things, nastier things, multiple things, whatever it is. Duplicitous would still pose a problem to him. The Defenders of Caliban, that's just one faction. Desperate Defense would still pose a problem to him, and if he can't get it done before 10 energy, he's gonna have a harder time. So
yeah, and also just please give him 35 HP. There's no reason for him being at 30. That's just
If Corswain gets 35, Lucius deserves it.
I think, correct me if I'm wrong, guys, but I'm pretty sure he's the only epic warlord in a Legion that is 30 HP now that Dara has been buffed to 35 as well.
That is correct.
Yeah, he's the only one.
Yeah,
we were talking about special cards. I'd like to see something related to his possible reincarnation, such as a sacrifice mechanic, even if it means giving him Survivor 1 for it to proc. So I was thinking, sacrifice Survivor 1, if you get a kill, heal by 9, boom, he's at 10 HP again. He stands a chance now. Not a high one, but something. Because he needs anything.
I'm surprised we don't have a warlord yet that has a backlash mechanic as well. That would make something interesting. I don't know if Lucius would be good with it, but it could make it could be something.
I know they've tried to code in a backlash on warlords, and it's failed for the Crucible a couple times. So they would have to do something like a sacrifice and give him Survivor 1. It's the only way they would pull it off.
That would also allow for counterplay.
Of course.
Which was something as well. If you want to look at the classic example of Survivor counterplay, look at the Salamanders. And, well, there's one really big guy with a hammer there who will say that you need to be able to control the Survivor rotation.
Yeah, Survivor, like a long-term game, is nice, and I think that's one reason why they gave Vulcan Survivor 3 from 5, because that was just too problematic. We could speculate on Lucius and how to fix him all day, and it would end up being just kind of like Balance Channel. There's a lot that we could do. Where he is right now, it's not great.
No.
Like you said, I think Pirate said it best. He is a meta-dependent warlord. He can still be good if the meta shifts to a meta state where he can really perform and dominate, and people will get caught off guard by him. Fulgrim, I think, is in the same degree where he can be good, whether it's how you use his ability or how you build the deck. There's nothing that sings about him. I mean, if you're just using his ability and you get a bunch of random generated tactics, that's terrible. But if you are going for the perfection, his Whispers is a pretty solid Whispers. And just talking about the character, Fulgrim was the first Primarch I got. I'm not a huge Emperor's Children fan. I'm not a huge Chaos fan in general. Like the Traitor Legions, they're the bad guys to me. They're the ones that I dislike. My friend, he plays Emperor's Children on the tabletop. He's got a great pink and black Noise Marine army. Rolls a lot of dice in the shooting phase. And we've always had that rivalry, and I didn't quite understand the lore. I knew the lore as far as why they turned, and it was like, okay, this is kind of interesting. And why are they called the Emperor's Children? Because they were awesome enough at the time to receive that honor and actually receive they were the first ones to actually be allowed to wear the Imperial Aquila on their chest plate, which now every Space Marine's got that, but at the time that was exclusive to just this Legion. That was a big honor for them. And for them to fall to that state, like the story of Fulgrim is pretty interesting as a character, because here's this faction that's chasing perfection. That's their whole thing is, well, be perfect in fight, perfect warriors, perfect in artistry and lore, and everything has got to be perfect. And how do they fall to chaos? Like, how do they get crazy? Like that story, and it's in the novel Fulgrim tells it the best. But what I find is really interesting is even beyond that decision to become traitors and to join Horus and to embrace the Slaanesh and the mutilation and the body experimentation that Fabius Bile gets into. Fulgrim takes it to the next level. He's the first one to really become a demon prince. Even in chaos, he's seeking perfection. He's going to be as chaos as it can possibly be. And I think that's so interesting, because it's like it's not just a perversion of what this faction was, but it is the ultimate perversion because they're so into it. Like I don't think compared to the other three factions who are dedicated to one chaos god, I don't think any of them embrace it the same way that the Emperor's Children do.
No. Yeah, it's really, and I know while we're speaking of lore, when you said he becomes the first demon prince, and it's just the whole perfection thing and how extravagant the Emperor's Children are is really interesting. And if you guys haven't seen the novel that is called Angels Exterminatus, if I remember correctly, there is a very special passage. I'm not spoiling anything. It's just basically the Emperor's Children are meeting up with the Iron Warriors, and when they actually, get down with their ships and everything, there's just that parade of nonsense and crazy thing going on. Like, they just go see the Iron Warriors, and Perturabo is out there seeing that old carnival, and he's like, what the hell is all that? Just real. It was like, I don't remember the exact words, but it was something around like perfect, like chaos perfected or something. Mm-hmm. It was crazy.
So I'm going to add something here as well, which is a bit of a spoiler for the lore, because technically Fulgrim is not the first to fall, because Fulgrim gets possessed. Yeah,
he's not. I mean, in terms of fall, like he gets possessed. He has that the demon ultimately he gives into that, and he lets the demon do the beheading of Ferrus Manus. But then at some point he ends up repossessing himself, and when he does, it's not a matter of like, oh, I've got to atone for myself. He's like, I did it, I'm back, but now I'm going full in. It's me this time.
Yeah, and moving on from that, then, I think he's the mirror of my favorite of the Emperor's Children warlords, which is Sultovitz for this. Sol, at first, is uncompromising in his beliefs. His beliefs in his legion being unable to fall, in any sense of the word, from what he defines as perfection, not what Fulgrim defines as perfection, which is interesting already because of how homogeneous the legion is. And then his disobedience of orders to get the whole, reveal going. Mm-hmm. Because he was originally supposed to go down to is it Istvan 2 or Istvan 3?
Istvan 3, yeah.
He's supposed to go down to Istvan 3 amongst the first wave, like most of the loyalists. He thinks something is suspicious. The Lore's not sure if he's captain of the 1st Company or 10th Company. So he sends his company down with Rylanor commanding him.
Well, it's not even that he thinks something suspicious. Rylanor just puts his hand in front of him and goes, "No, I'm going in front of you, Saul. We're going to see what happens."
Okay. I haven't read the lore properly. I should maybe disclaimer everything. I have not read any books outside of a couple of Custodes books. He then finds out that his ship is being ordered to load virus bombs into their weapons chambers for bombardment whilst his own soldiers are down there. He steals a gunship and tries to make for the planet. He's detected. Eidolon orders his destruction. And then he bumps into Garrow and warns Garrow about what's supposed to happen. And then we get the flight of the Eisenhorn. Mm-hmm. So the entire reason why Garrow was able to warn the Imperium, the Imperium's already realized when Istvan 4, the other Istvan betrayal happens, that something very wrong has happened.
No, this is the
Garrow's
first
able
Istvan
to warn them, this is the exact reason, or this is the exact way it happened. All thanks to this guy. And his uncompromising belief in the perfection of his legion, in their loyalty.
Yeah, no, it's a crazy story involving Fulgrim. Also being one of the few Primarchs to get shot in the head and survive, I guess.
Yeah.
Who shoots them again? Is it Sherokin? The guy who, the Mary Sue of 30K?
They got that voice line of Corzoin saying, "I left my sword in a Primarch's spine." I would have loved something about that for Sherokin as well.
About Primarch in their head?
Yeah.
That would be funny.
Well, I liked how when Cherokee was available in events before the draft system, how one of his decks was called Primarch Killer.
Primarch Killer, that's pretty good.
Yeah.
A shame he didn't succeed.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. It was a good story. That was also in Angel Exterminatus. That was part of that story. I gotta say, I mean, Graham McNeil. Yeah, Graham McNeil is one of the heresy lore authors that I enjoy the most. I think I like Aaron Dembski-Bowden, Dan Abnett stuff, and then Graham McNeil stuff. I think in general, I tend to rank their books higher. At least in Horus Heresy, like the Warhammer 40K. I'm not a huge McNeil fan, but I think that's primarily because he writes Ultramarines, and I don't read the Ultramarine stuff.
I'll read the Ultramarines on merit because of I'd be disrespecting my boys, the Word Bearers. No, I read their stuff. I just, I don't seek it out or anything.
No, and it's Emperor's Children's are interesting bunch in the lore for sure. But I think in 40K they have better stories, or at least better things. Because in 30K and the Horus Heresy, I think some of the work involving the Emperor's Children is a bit lacking, Coherence. Like a lot of stuff is not making sense.
Yeah, I think because they're trying to tell a couple different stories, depending on, okay, we got to talk about why this legion fell, and what does that mean? Because in some circles or cliques of the Emperor's Children, it looks different. The Noise Marine thing has not been, it's established, like there's a couple Noise Marines, but it's not like they're all about, the cacophony of war and these wicked, sound instruments. Like that's such a minor detail. It's not the main way that they wage war. They're still waging war as they would, but they're slowly giving into whether it's demonic possession or torture or mutilation. They haven't experienced the full gamut of it. I think that really kind of, I didn't say comes full circle, but it comes to the head at the end of the heresy, and then that's when, when we get the 40K versions of them, those have long been established. They're deep into Slaanesh. They're no longer a legion. They're not a cohesive legion. You get war bands of them. They might fight now and then. There might be a ship or a raiding party, and it's just pure debauchery, whether that is hedonism, torture, impaling, vibrant colors on the armor. Like they've just gone full circle, and it's almost madness. And that's always been, the Games Workshop long-standing 40K image. And I think it's hard for them to get to that point in the Horus Heresy series because you got to tell that fall, you got to show it. I think Eidolon is my least favorite Emperor's Children character. Yeah, I'm not a fan of him. He's a first captain. He's got an interesting story in terms of what happens to him, but he ends up
captain number first.
Yeah, he's first captain. He's got that classic arrogant, the guy that you want to punch in the face, and he goes from that person to the last story that I've read with him was Pathway of Heaven, where he is assisting Mortarion in chasing the White Scars, and who he has become at that point is this, really, through several other events, he's kind of dealing with the scars of that, but he is like this sluggish, almost half zombified, not in rotting terms, but in terms of how his motor skills are not the best, but at the same time he's still an enhanced warrior, and he's got piercings, and he can barely pull his lips apart to talk sometimes, and his tongue, and it's got hooks that pull at his flesh because there's such a sensation, and it's such this weird change from that character, and you don't see a whole lot happen between then and there. Somehow he gets there. So there are those inconsistencies, and I think that's supposed to take place over a couple of years before then, and obviously he goes through a few different things, but I think they have to show that. They have to show pockets of that, because there are some Emperor's Children who are traitors, but haven't gone full pell-mell into the chaos of it. I think in Pathway of Heaven, there's a prime example. There's a Palatine Blade who everybody else in his company has fallen to chaos and perversion, and he is trying to do everything he can to fight the way he always has fought, and not embrace demonic possession or any of the gifts of chaos or whatever it is. And I think ultimately he knows that his end or his damnation is coming, and he goes into that. But that's kind of like that little last spark of whatever these guys had as they fought previously is gone. And I haven't gotten to the Siege books yet, but for those who don't know, this is not too much of a spoiler. This is a spoiler for those who don't know, but for those who know, when the Emperor's children arrive on Terra, at the Siege of Terra, at that point they lose all cohesion, and they aren't really a fighting force anymore. They just go on a spree. And Fulgrim's, I don't know if Fulgrim's to be found or if he's at the head of it. Like, they basically just have, hey, they're having a heyday, and so they don't contribute a whole lot to the siege because they're doing their own thing. And through the course of the whole Horus Heresy series, they've kind of been slowly walking that line and getting to that point closer and closer where, yeah, we're just, at some point, who cares? Like, let's just play some music really loud.
Yeah. When they went into Terra, and for the Siege of Terra, they actually started very well, but the problem is, Shirley got into a fight with another Primarch, and he just, after that fight, he just loses all interest in the actual siege, and he just leaves, and that's where things go even worse for the Queen of the Legion, and they just, and that's something that is, I don't know if you guys know that, but in an old codex, it said that after the Siege of Terra, Vulcan went after Fabius Baal personally to kill him because of all the atrocities he did on Terra. Some of those were melting people into drugs for the Astartes to inject it to themselves. It was pretty.
I forgot about that.
Yeah,
and when you think about when you talk about, because when you talk about like, okay, mutilation and pain and noise weaponry, but man, like the 40k lore and the old school GW lore for the things that are possible in Warhammer 40,000 in the 41st millennium, combat drugs is just like, yeah, it's a special rule, it's combat drugs, but like, there's so many things involved about it. Like you said, like melting people into drugs. The dark Eldar have got a whole list of things that they've done. Like there's, I forget the name of the character, the one Cabal, where they're like, hey, they were trying to help out the Tau at some point. They're like, hey, we'll help you out against these Tyranids if you send us some of your Earth cast or whatever it was. And the Tau's like, okay, that sounds like a reasonable cast. And then like in the middle of the battle, these giant mutated Earth cast things show up, and they're like, and the Tower like, oh, that's what you did with them. Like, that's messed up. Like,
yeah, really is.
I love that. Like, send us some envoys over from your group, and we'll send you some of yours, and they just melt them into a giant monster.
If we're going to talk about the weird things for Warhammer, I think if we're talking about Fabius Baal, the weirdest thing is he doesn't actually believe in chaos. That's
changed.
That's being changed? Okay.
It has been changed. He has now sworn himself to Slaanesh, sadly.
Okay. For a long time,
I'm not quite sure about that assessment.
Yes and no. He's now more into chaos than he was previously. He's not like a complete like chaos obsessed lunatic. Okay. But he can't deny its existence much longer. I can't say anything more than that. The third book in his series came out, and you should check it out.
Yeah, because I don't remember if it's in Clone Lord or I'm pretty sure it's in Clone Lord. But in Clone Lord, he says that he feels like the Emperor was on the right path to do the right things, but couldn't go a bit further to get perfection for real. So while yes, he does believe in chaos, I don't think I think he sees himself above.
Well, he did. That was his personality. But in the latest books, things have changed for chaosy reasons.
Okay, all right.
You heard it here, folks. This is why you need to read the books and keep up to date.
For chaosy reasons. Well, until they do a retcon or something like that.
It's always.
This is Black Library. Everything is true, even that's been retconned.
It's hard to say with some of the characters, like when they do a story, like I was just talking about, Fulgrim, when they did that first review, I'm like, oh no, he got possessed, or he got stashed in the blade, and there was a demon that was doing all the stuff for him. Like, that was such an interesting concept because it was tragic, that happened. And you're like, at the same time, you're like, wait a minute, he's a Primarch, and then all of a sudden he's just back. Like, nah, I'm back. I found a way out, because of course I did, because I'm a Primarch. And then it's like, oh, okay. Like, they just do that stuff all the time. It's just fine. It kind of keeps things on the toes, but depending on the character or the progression, because I remember Fabius Bile showing up in one of the Blood Angels stories, and he was doing some funky stuff to their, oh god, was that the third Blood Angels book? Did you guys read the Blood Angels trilogy at all?
I've read a couple of them, but I read the first two. I didn't read the third one.
They're terrible.
Yeah.
You're not going to miss it. They're written by David Annandale, and I wanted to like them because I wanted to get into the Blood Angels and learn a little bit. And I think in terms of, I think he nails the faction stuff with the Blood Rage, or the Bloodthirst and the Black Rage. But then the stuff that happens in the books, you're like, what the fuck did you do to this faction, dude? Like, he causes a civil war in 2 books that wipes out half of the Blood Angels faction, and then in the third faction, he ends up having the successors getting called, the Blood Angels calling all the successors to try to help fill their faction back up because they've killed themselves. And then in the course of that, Fabius Bile infiltrates the apothecarium of the Blood Angels and fools the apothecary. I think, was it not Typho? Who's the apothecary?
Tycho.
No, not Captain Tycho's. Lamartis. No, Lamartis is the chaplain. Who's the special character that's the apothecary?
Is it Mephiston or something like that?
No, Mephiston's the librarian.
Maros?
No,
Maros would be
Maros. Yeah, we're gonna go through the whole thing. He's the special character apothecary that's got the chalice of Sanguinius. I'm gonna Google it right now while I'm talking about it. Anyways, he fools him, does some experimentation, and then turns a bunch of Astartes recruits into ever-growing mutant vampire Batmen, who then just eat more and more Astartes and become more and more powerful. And then there's this last stand where basically all of the second founding chapters are helping the Blood Angels make this last stand at Sanguinius' tomb, and by the end of it all, you're like, who the fuck is left? What did you do to this faction? This faction is a whole chapter of Blood Angels, and you've wiped not just them out, but you've wiped out their second founding as well. And I think from somewhere along beyond that, they ended up getting to, then they did the whole Tyranid invasion, and then the Necrons helped them out. I haven't read that story at all, but it's really fucked up. It was a terrible trilogy, and I'm sorry if I spoiled it for anybody, but I hope in spoiling it, you guys don't have to read it, because it was not good.
By spoiling it, you hope no one else has to bear upon the pain.
Yes. Yeah, you've been warned, guys. You've been warned.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like that. So yeah, that's well, I think back to the game. If I check again, I think they could have made a bit more usage of the perfection thing, but the corrupted perfection would have been a bit cooler too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, as far as the mechanic goes, as far as the perfection mechanic goes, I mean, it's not overly complex, but it offers a lot, and I think it's a solid mechanic. I don't know if I would rate it as my favorite, but I think it offers a lot that is easy to get into, and at the same time, I don't know. It's. I think somebody mentioned it either here or in one of the Discords. It makes the faction very good for a player to learn how to play on curve, because you're playing on curve. What does that mean? You're playing the cards on the energy card that you can cost it and try to get everything that you can played out. But then the perfection mechanic gives you a reward for doing that. And then you've got guys who allow you to also play ahead of curve, like Tarvitz, which doubles down on that feature. But I really like that.
It was on here. I can't remember which episode, but it was definitely on here. And in the same episode, there was a shout out to someone who has a dedicated server on Discord purely for learning and refining how to play the Emperor's Children.
That's right.
I cannot remember the name, and I need to apologize for that.
That's Van Bonin, yeah. Yep.
It was either,
Yes.
I think it was not last episode, but the one before with Blackout.
Yes, it was. That is correct. You are correct, sir.
Yeah, it's a good place. I'm in there too. It's a good place to see some of the crazy stuff that the Emperor's Children can do. You got some good deck builders and stuff, so it's nice. Yeah, those type of community thing, those are pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I think about the Emperor's Children. It's good faction, and when I look that again, I can totally see myself. If let's say if I decide to just play them for a full month, I can definitely see myself in iTerra with them. But for anyone here that is listening, if you want to go maybe even higher than iTerra, you're gonna have to work really hard, I think, with the Emperor's Children to make that possible.
Take this from a grain of salt. Remember, Pirate climbs the top 50 often.
Oh yeah, well, I think that's because you guys. I think you scoffed back in the days. There wasn't, there was just ladder, right? I think there was. Yeah, that's it. So everyone was just playing all the time, but now I don't face some great players anymore because those guys they just stay a bit lower. So I don't face those guys, but. Yeah, I've been in top 50 quite a lot for now. I think it's like eight season in a row now. One of those was War Master, and it's hard, but it's it's doable. But with Emperor's Children, I think it would be quite hard.
I need a disclaimer then that anything I've said is based off the experiences of someone who's maybe not played much ladder, but has been doing a bit of event, and also whatever I am, I know I am purely on the ladder at 2,000. Exactly. So, yeah.
If we trust EG, you are in the top 10%, because that's what they say.
If we trust them.
That's true.
Well, then again, they say Terra itself is top 1%, so I don't understand where EG are pulling out these numbers.
Well, the 1%, that's been a set number for a long time. Whether that's accurate or not remains to be seen, because at this point, how many players are in the game and how many of them are actually playing. What hasn't changed, top 50 is still 50 different players. I don't think there's any more people pulling Havocs, so I think they are actually 50 different players.
There's no one doing that anymore. At least I don't think so. I got a couple guys in Masterclass that I also count, and they get them pretty high, but doing top 50 on 2 separate accounts would be a lot of time invested, and I don't think anyone wants to do that now.
Yeah.
What about the reverse? Pull a NEP and have 40 guys work on one account. It works.
Yeah, it used to be not legal, but, EG used to have no rules over that, so you could actually share account before. Right now, you can't.
Yeah, in the TOS, yeah.
So, yeah, but yeah, top 50 is, it's a cool thing to do. It's fun, but you're gonna play a lot of the same guys in that season. Like, I know everyone in top 50 right now, and they know me. Like, we face a lot. While you guys face a lot more players than I do, I think.
Yeah, I run into a lot of the same people, and it's starting to annoy me.
I think depending on where you're at in whether it's ladder practice, like if I'm at 2,500, usually 25 to 26, I rarely see the same person. There's so many people that are just they reach Terra. They're at the same. I think they're kind of in the same boat I am, where there's like I'm good, I'm done. I don't want to play ladder. I just want to play the game. I want to have fun. I want to try new decks or do a challenge, whatever the reason it is. So it's such a huge pool. Whereas if you're at 4,000 and you go into practice, you're either going to practice against the same people that you're playing, or you're going to practice against bots. And 9 times out of 10, you're probably going to get a bot because that's all.
Yeah. If you go to practice at the end of the month, well, like I do that only. I go practice only at the end of the month when I don't want to, lose points. When I just want to do my dailies, basically. Mm-hmm. And that's just bots. There's no one. If I turn bots off and I start practice match, I could wait 1 hour for finding something.
And which is so weird because you should be able to at least get paired with somebody down below because it's practice. It doesn't count, but the game or the algorithm, however, hasn't figured that out. So yeah, practice at lower levels, whether that's Mars or Terra, you're going to have a huge pool.
Oh yeah,
compared to higher up, and
there is more player there, and also I think that the biggest stepstone for the game is going, if you talk ladder, is going from getting into Terra from Terra. This is why most players, they're kind of stuck between that. Like you said earlier, you faced a lot of guys that are different people, not just the same guys over and over like us, because those guys they're still figuring out the game. Like perfecting their technique or their collections,
Yep.
So it's normal that you see a lot of them there, but the highest you climb, I can't be matched up with people that are sitting on Terra if I'm close to 5K,
Right. And
we had a glitch
go ahead.
with that actually reported into the Traders and chat at one point, where a player from High Terra bumped into a player who had a ladder score of, if memory serves, and it's 5 a.m., so don't trust me completely, around 250.
Oof.
Yes, that was at the start of this season. Actually, I remember that. Like that was somebody was like, and they were told them to have it reported. I don't know if Everguild responded back or they did something that had happened a couple times at the start, like the very first day or two of the season, and it was like, this is odd, like because we had seen it not last season but the season before. I think a lot of people in the ranked chat on Discord were reporting getting paired up with people who are like 1,500 points less than them, and sometimes that happens, but 1,500 points is a pretty big spread. They're like, this is kind of odd. But 2,000 points is a totally different thing altogether. It's like, what's going on?
Well, they did change a bit how you matched up against people, because if you look, I think the season they actually changed it was during the last expansion, the October season, which is the one Vapix won the War Master, if I remember correctly. They actually made you, like, if you get to the top, you can face people that are like more than 1,000 points, and that'll happen often. Before that, it was a lot of bots. Going higher on iTerra, you were facing 4 times out of 5 bots and a player then. But now it's changed. You will face a bot, and 4 times out of the 5 you will face a player. But it will be significantly lower than you know.
Interesting.
Yeah. It is what it is. Honestly, I think EG should adjust the point systems to make people want to do ladder more. Because, not gonna lie, doing top 15, all that, this is a real grind at the end of the day.
Absolutely.
You get 4 points a win, and if you lose, you get something like, you lose like 15. So you basically lose 45 minutes of your time if you get one loss,
For me, like, there's a lot of factors in there, but the only thing I get out of playing ladder is I get some extra gold for a win. I get nothing else, and I don't need that gold. I'm not chasing a whole bunch of cards. I don't care about card backs, so getting top 50 isn't anything that I'm interested in to spend that much time on. At the end of a season, I get 100 gold and some duplicate cards which turn into gems. That's all I'm getting, so there's no reason for me to play and grind so hard to get a reward that is really just going to be the equivalent of something that I could get playing an event, one event run and get the same thing, and I can do that in a night versus spending a whole month grinding and pulling my hair out and getting frustrated and cussing out the screen because I got shafted or cheated or matched up against somebody. I can just go and practice, and I can play some games and have fun, and I can pick a warlord that I haven't played in a long time. And yeah, that whether it's the point system that feeds into that or the pricing that goes with it, like there's just reasons for me not to. And I know there's a lot of people who are probably in the same boat.
I do think that there's a lot of people that do like you. And let's be real here. Like, top 50 is mostly for the bragging rights of having the card back and being like, oh, I made the scoreboard this season, and it's fine. It's nice to do. It's fun. But if it wasn't such of a pain to do, I think more people would want to play ladder, because at the end of the day, it's fun. Like, because the only thing I dislike about practice is that there's a lot of people that are either just not playing optimized deck or just straight up memeing. And it's fine. It's totally fine. But I like playing people that are like, they're just, that they got their best deck and they want to win against you. I like that personally. I know a lot of guys do too, but the point system I think is really holding the thing back.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's always been a thing, because like you win 4 points, you lose 14, and the time that it takes to get those 14 back. You might lose another 14 right before you get it. And then sometimes you have those nights where you just have a downward slide and you go and you drop like 30 points on ladder, which is a lot.
Yeah, and it gets worse. The higher you get, it gets worse.
Yeah.
I speak from experience with when I did my War Master season of November. It becomes 3 points a win, and it's like something like 12 loss, or 13. I think it's 13, just enough to make you lose your shit when you lose a game. I'm not kidding you, boys. When I did it, I had to play like 8 or 9 hours for the last 5 days of the season.
It's crazy.
It's a job, man. It becomes a job. Yeah. It's ridiculous.
And that just sucks the fun out. Like, it's fun for me to play it for an hour, here or there when I'm doing like 2 hours, maybe if I'm doing some editing or doing some videos, trying to prep a deck or like event runs, but to grind up against that on ladder, and that is, there's not a whole lot of forgiveness. You lose a game. It's not like, I'll just come back. Like, you are losing all the time that you put into that. Oof.
Exactly. I've seen, like, I consider myself not someone that will tilt easily, but that doing that, I did tilt a lot. Like, I would lose one game and be like, motherfucker, now I basically just lose 1 hour of my time.
Right.
For every loss. So this is why I have a lot of respect for people that do it, but it's a fucking chore to do.
Yeah. Now, we should probably, I'd like to have more episode talk where we're just talking ladder itself or top 50, and that, I think, just having players who have done that grind, or War Master, or whoever that's out there who wants to have that chat, because there's so many factors beyond just winning, because you've got to pick warlords, you've got to pick, you've got to win, you've got to have the time to play, you've got to have a deck that can win consistently. And I know when we had Karmatos on, I think on episode 2, we were talking about speed of play. You've got to, have a deck that can win, but also win fairly quickly at the start of the season to help break away. And there's so much strategy that goes on that, especially when you're playing at that high level. So just having an episode to talk about it would be nice.
It is something interesting to talk about. I think it's something that could help some people, actually do it. Like, some people, I know a lot of people are stuck a bit, like, they're doing a lot of ladder, but they're kind of doing some mistakes that cost them their season. Just like, I think you guys got J Trails on the podcast, right?
Yep.
And I think he missed top 50 by 3 spots last season.
Yes.
And he was pretty gutted about that. And now he's joined Masterclass, and we're giving him tips and stuff, and it's going pretty well. So, yeah, giving tips and sharing experiences is really important to help all players, I think.
Yeah, and I think I was talking to him a little bit on Discord today. I think he's in like the 38th spot or something like that. So he's feeling pretty good. We've only got 3 days left to go of the event, so he should make top 50 this month, which is good. But getting back to the Emperor's Children, I guess we'll kind of wrap that subject up and then really quick kind of touch on plugs and what you guys do outside Legions. Overall, how would you rate the Emperor's Children as a faction? Scale 1 to 10. And then what is your, and we'll just do it as a two-parter, what is your favorite Emperor's Children card? So we'll start with Axel.
Would I rate him out of 10?
Yeah.
I'd probably rate him a lot lower if not for DD existing, because the amount of Sol DDs I run into on a daily basis. I think they're pretty, they're not going to dominate the meta like a certain household we all know of. But I'd say they're like a 7, 8. They're not like God tier, but I like them. They're fun to play. Favorite card for him? Rylanor. Rylanor is fun. He can set up some stupid combos if you play him on curve and then slap down that other Dreadnought. Plus he comes with shield. He's nice.
All right.
Yeah, that's nice.
What about you, Pirate?
I would give 2 ratings if you let me.
Sure.
If you allow me to, I would give one renting for fun and one for actual, competition / how good they can be. So for fun, I rank them at a solid 8. Could it be even 9? I think they're one of the most fun faction out there. That when it works, you're just like, wow, that's awesome. You share screens and people they're all like, oh man, good job, that's amazing. So I think they're solid 8 or 9 for fun. And for doing an actual deck that, is reliable for winning and doesn't involve too much luck. I think they're like maybe a 6.
Right. What is your favorite Emperor's Children card?
Oh yeah, and I gotta go with Pride of the Emperor. It's just it's a fun thing to get it back into your hand when the reduced cost. It's fun. It's a fun thing to do.
All right. How about you, Luca?
So yeah,
I'm going to hate myself for this, but looking at the faction all by themselves and considering what we've talked about, so excluding any neutral cards which would be going into the deck, I would actually rate them at a 5 for anyone who's trying to do anything at the higher levels, because they need some neutrals to work, and I'm voting on them as a standalone unit. That said, I think the favorite card here has to be Tactical Brilliance. It just defines them.
Yeah, I think Tactical Brilliance is my favorite as well. And because it offers a lot of options, it's unless you're playing with the banded supplies in your deck, in which case you really shouldn't if you've got Tactical Brilliance. But I think that's my favorite card to go to. I'm at toss-up as well, because as a faction, I think that they are very new player friendly. They've got a lot of good cards. They've got some cards that have not aged well. And the Warlords really, they've got their highs and lows. I feel like a 7 or a 6.5 is probably where I would fall in there. So I'm going to give them a 6.75.
Ooh.
Yeah, I'm going with decimals.
But like, oh, okay, that's fairly precise.
I didn't know we'd have to do math on this podcast. I don't know. I didn't sign up for math.
Yeah, we've got the intellectual here.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Well, so we've talked about the Emperor's Children. I think, primarily in games terms, there's a lot of lore, I think, as being one of the key big players in the heresy. There's so many books and stories that are dedicated to them. I don't know if you could cover it all in 1 or 2 or 3 podcasts, even without having to break down character arcs and all that. I just don't think there's any way to get into it. But I think they're more interesting than they were for me before I started reading. And I think the game has done a well enough job showcasing the perfection mechanic and kind of tying in, like, for those cards that allow for chaos, marks of chaos to be received, or mutations, or whatever it is. I think that the game has done a very good job on them. So with that all behind us, talking about the game, let's talk about what you guys do outside when you're not playing Legions. As it might just depend on what you've got. Pirate, like you said, if you're doing top 50 and you're grinding at the end of the season, you might be spending a lot of time grinding. When you're not grinding, what do you do?
Yeah, well, I don't grind as much as I used to because I got some tricks now. But yeah, I don't spend as much time as I used to, but yeah, I do spend a lot of time, but mostly handling the masterclass community takes a good portion of my time. It's just really big, and you need to do a lot of stuff to keep the machine working, right? And it takes a bit of time, but I'm quite a happy guy, a lucky guy, I'd say, because my work, I basically fix big machines. I got a lot of free times there working nights and stuff. So right now, since the pandemic started, I would say that all I do now is work and then wait for this whole mess to end. But normally I'm gonna travel a lot. I travel to Europe a lot, and I just love traveling a lot. So that's basically it for me.
Nice. Mm-hmm. How about you, Luca?
Most of my time right now is taken up with essay work, or sleeping. It's one of the two. Sleeping, essay work, which, for the clarification, includes reading. Yeah. I haven't really touched ladder for a year and a half now. I'm more an event guy.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
There's nothing wrong with that. How about you, Axel?
Yeah.
What you up to?
I haven't been doing much. Just kind of being, like, relaxing. Besides work, I just, hang around. Because it's entertaining to see my party of, I guess I can call them idiots, because it's what they really are. Just have the dice rolls not be in their favor and have some fun results. Besides that, been playing Legions. Don't touch ranked. I like being in practice in low Terra. It's where I live. It's fun here. I play in Go Peck now.
Yeah.
Yeah. You said you were an event player. You guys have a lot of good event player over at Trader's End. I don't face a lot of them, sadly, but when I do, it's all just.
Yeah,
I wouldn't call myself good.
Yeah, well, with the draft thing, it kind of mixes it up now because you got to be a decent pull and deck builder too. But I've had some fun. I'm looking forward to the release events. I mean, that's going to be a whole different thing altogether. But the raid event was a really big push, and I know I think we had 2 of our lodges in top 10. I wish we would have coordinated a little bit better to try to get more, because we had a couple players who were putting up, I think, 30k points. I think 20k, 30k points alone, which is enough to get a gold crate for a lodge by themselves. And it was great for all the lodges hit good, but at the same time, I wish we could have coordinated or knew what we were doing with the raid boss a little bit better, so that we could have gotten them all moved into 2 or 3 lodges that were really into it to push higher. I don't think anybody missed out. I think everybody got what they wanted to and got the prizing, and some lodges were okay passing with the raid boss because they didn't have the tickets. So that's just the way it goes. Doing the event thing is there's a whole strategy behind that too. So just like you talking about managing, ladder, we manage events, that's a whole different thing. We'll have to talk about that someday.
Exactly. And I don't know if you remember, but the last few hours of the raid event was crazy. I was at 15k points done 6 hours before the end of the raid event, and everyone started to push. I did another 15k during that 6 hours.
Yeah, it was
insane.
I gave
everyone crazy.
Yeah, we went hard, and I mean the amount of points. I think the top 4 or top 5 were just head and shoulders above everybody else in top 10. And top 10, I mean, that was no slouch. There was a lot of people putting up points, but the last day was oh man, we're going for it. We had everything unlocked, but at this point, I think people were just playing to play and see how high they could go. It was probably the highest event points that I've gotten in a really long time. Typically I might get 4,000, maybe 5,000, and then I'm good with it. I'm okay, because I'm not pulling anything I need. I don't need to pull anything. We're looking good on the spot, but that was just keep going. I'm pulling Pelagor, I'm pulling Titus. Just keep going, man. Keep playing.
It was insane, man.
Yeah.
And you guys were talking about Dozer here. Dozer was able to make a deck, an event, which contained 8 Astrovel.
Jeez. I got 5 as my highest. I got 5 Astrovels, 5 Decors, and it was the same 3-card pack 5 times, but 6. That's
all you needed. Yeah, that's all you needed to win.
Yeah.
Draft is growing on me. I'm liking draft.
Yeah.
It's memey enough where it's fun.
I agree. It still has the problem of not being friendly to new players, and that's a problem.
I keep hearing that, but I look in my lodge, and we're a really new player friendly lodge, and we'll have a new player, 300 points. They'll drop 4,000 points in events. First time doing events, no problem because of the draft system.
Are they doing rerolls or no rerolls?
No rerolls because they don't have the gems to do it.
Yeah, as long as they've got people helping
them. I keep
them.
hearing it's not new player friendly, but new players keep exceeding just through sheer luck.
Well, and they stand the same luck as everybody else to an extent. So, Whereas before, I mean, you could say the same thing before, but really, if they were a new player and they had no idea about the game or what decks were the deck to go for, they could pick a warlord that they're I'm going to play with, Kurz because he's a Primarch. Why not? And then they don't know that the other deck is the deck that everybody's picking, and it just shuts them down every time. They're why am I losing? Because you don't know that this is the deck that is the one to win. Everybody's playing Duquesne. That's what wins,
So, Orion is the low intensity lodge amongst the Trader's End community. And I have noted that consistently my players, I don't actually want to call them that, my group will actually perform them better with the new system than the old system. It's not by much, but it's still noticeable.
I think, I think that's fair because I think the observations I've seen whether it's rerolls or not, I think at least people, because that was always the general complaint, like, hey, you don't get the deck that wins, then you're sunk. Like, what's the point? And that wasn't always the case, because there's always been events that there's been 2 or 3 different decks that have been good. But that's just not an argument anymore. Like, just play the event and pick the pack that's got the best cards, and then play from there. Now, granted, the last couple events have had Dark Angels in them, and have been really, like, I mean, what's not to go wrong with Astravels and Operator Decors, or Eschaton Imperatives?
It's even worse when you get the 2/2 quest to get put back in hand.
Yeah.
Because there you can just do a carousel.
Yep, and keep it going, and you had Pelagor's passive ability. I would like to play that again. I played that so much, I would like to play it again. It was really good times.
Well, right now in current event, though, I think Zariel is doing a bit better. I've seen a lot of my of the players in Masterclass showcase some of the decks in 12 wins, and he's doing pretty good. So if you guys listening want to head on to event, I would recommend Zariel, and I would recommend getting those cheap tactics into the deck, like local uprising. One of the guys actually had 7 local uprising, which was like a nightmare.
That's a lot.
Or reinforcements will be come Friday.
Yeah, I'm curious.
Come tomorrow, if you're listening to this. Hey.
By the time, well, yeah, when this episode comes out, reinforcements will be tomorrow, and hopefully there will be an announcement for a Q&A. That's I eagerly await that. So, with that being said, let's go ahead and plug. Pirate, do you have anything you would like to plug?
No. Well, thank you for having me again. It's a really fun experience. Podcast is great. I think you guys are doing an awesome job, and I'm just happy to share stuff with everyone. So yeah, just it's I don't have anything else to say. It was just really good on my part.
All right. Well, yeah, thanks. We're glad you're able to make it on. And it's hard sometimes with different time zones and people in different parts of the globe. I know I don't know if you're in Canada right now, but I believe you're in the Quebecer area. So that makes it a little bit easier. But we've got folks out there in Europe or...
Yeah, I think Luca is in Europe right now, and it's getting pretty late.
Yeah, like you said, 5 a.m.
It's actually early. It's 5:25 now.
It's crazy.
5 hours ahead of me. Jesus.
Yeah.
I'm lucky that... so today, actually, the hour went forwards as well.
So you guys had daylight savings time today?
Yeah, we had daylight savings today.
We had it like a week ago, I think.
Yeah, you guys had it a week ago, which is why I was a little bit confused, because I assumed it was 13:30 my time. I'd misread the PM for an AM, and I'd also forgotten the time conversion.
If I lived in Arizona, then if Arizona doesn't have daylight savings time, which is even weirder, take that, like it's one state out of 50 in the United States, and they're just like, nah, now we're not doing it.
I mean, there's sense to both positions.
I mean, at this point, everybody does it, so it is what it is. It doesn't make sense to me. I mean, we just changed the clock. Guess what? There's still 24 hours in the day. I still have to work 8 hours a week. It's not like I get magical time off. It's the illusion of time more than anything. But it's always weird that like you could literally drive through a state and they're just like, we ignore those rules. That doesn't apply here. Well, that's weird. Like now we drive with square tires on this road. Like what? Nobody else does that. Yeah. Well, welcome to Arizona. Axel,
that joke flew over my head.
No, well, that's like, yeah, I don't know if it was really a joke. I used to live next to Arizona, and there's nothing wrong with Arizona.
No, there's everything wrong with Arizona. Today, boys, we're declaring war on Arizona. Quebec and the rest of Canada can have their peace treaty to fight Arizona.
God.
If you're in Arizona, and I think Karmatos is, Axel has declared war on you. So
I have no comments.
All right.
Silence speaks louder than words.
Yeah. I don't have much to plug myself, besides deck slots and the April deck list contest. So when this podcast when this podcast airs, the Cultist podcast will be the Cultist deck list contest will have ended. So then we'll be talking about what the April deck list contest is, but that is easy way for people to submit to win gold. First place wins 1,000 gold, second place 500, third place wins 300 gold. All you have to do is build a deck list that matches the theme of the month and send that to me along with your player name, and at the end of the month I rank them, and the top 3 get prizes. So if you're a newer player or you want to get gold and bank it up for the upcoming expansion, and everybody should be banking gold for the Imperial Fists, then that's a great way to do it. If not, then consider tournaments. If you're listening to this now and you haven't signed up for the World Cup, the chance to do so is past. However, there is weekly tournaments that take place on the Discord. I recommend you sign up on those, play them. They've got some decent turnout, and they always give good prizing, and that is weekly. And there's player types of all skill levels. So there's that. And then if you just want casual tournaments where we have fun and drink and play cards, and there's the only prize at stake is the title of the Meodmeister and maybe some party fouls. If you don't know the rules of the format of the week, that's Bar Night Legions. We do that too. That's also on Discord, so check it out.
Yeah, there was a special requirement though for Burn Night, and is you need to stay awake, not pass out like I did last time.
Do yeah, like Pirate just like wandered off. He's like, I'll be back, and then he just never came back.
I passed out on my chair with a beer full.
We figured because like right before you like signed out, like we heard some bottles clinking. We're like, I don't know if he's coming back, and we waited, but I think at that point it was pretty clear.
Yeah, I woke up 2 hours later, really confused. Fun times.
It was good
fun
times.
Tournament, boys. If you listen, join that tournament. It's a lot of fun.
Next one is going to be April 3rd, I believe, which is Easter Eve. So, and that format, I think I got to take a look. I know I did special rules. I'm doing Wingman. That's right. We're doing the Wingman format. So that one is a little different. It's the same classic Bar Night Legion stuff where no top tier stuff is allowed, but it's a slight variation on the Conquest format. Conquest format normally you have to have 2 warlords from different factions, and you have to win with both. You still have to have 2 warlords, you have to win with both, but the Wingman format, they have to be from the same faction. So if you're going to pick Saul, then your second warlord has got to be one of the other Emperor's Children warlords. So it's not quite faction specific. I mean, it is in terms of warlords, but you could play decks totally different. So that is the format, and that is going to take place on April 3rd. So,
but do I bring 1 deck or 2 stuff?
You bring 2. Well, that's the thing. It's up to you want. If you want to play Ingo Pack, 1 deck for Ingo Pack might work, but I don't think an Ingo Pack deck with, Artillus Dynad is going to do you any good, or Alfarius.
We will see. That is a challenge
I want to see it.
Accept.
Let's do it. All
Really,
right.
if I'm bringing Alpha Legion, I'm bringing all 4 warlords. That's just how it works.
You never know what you're going to get with Alpha Legion, right? Well, thank you guys for making it on. Oh, go ahead.
It is a faction where it's basically one shoe fits all if you're doing it right. If you're doing it wrong, you're playing tactics.
Yeah, if you're playing traps, you're doing it wrong. # don't play traps.
Listen, if I'm up against demons or mono warlord, I ain't switching to Ingo.
No.
You will have my traps in your deck.
That's fair. I'm still annoyed that the custodians got the change such that the orders work on them, but not demons.
Yeah.
Hey, that's a Custodes fanboy for you.
The Custodes need a facelift.
I don't think they need a facelift.
I think Sentinel needs a rework completely. As a mechanic, it's just not good.
Compared to Dark Angels, who have basically they can just out ramp, but out buff Custodes. Like Custodes offer nothing for their troop. Like their troop, the best troop they have has flank. That's what the upsell is. He has flank and first strike. Everything else is like, okay, I don't have a rally effect. I don't have anything else. It's Paragon Spear that really wins the day for them.
I feel really bad because I'm arguing against buffing my favorite faction, but I don't think they need especially much a buff, especially at the higher levels. What they need is a way in which newer players into the faction can more easily use it. This is where a greater number of draw cards would be available. So I wouldn't completely change Sentinel. I would change Imperial Emissary or Imperial Bureaucrat. Those cards.
I feel like just like some of their troops are well statted, but then there's others where it's like, yeah, put Sentinel on it, and then just no one will ever use that troop.
Mm.
Oh well, Custodians are a different bag of worms. Though.
That's a whole different thing. We'll get there one day.
I'll be happily back for them if you ever need me for that.
Sure.
We'll burn that bridge when we get there.
When we get there.
Right.
In the meantime, thank you guys for making it on. I know it's early for you, Luca, Pirate. I appreciate you being on and talking with us about the Emperor's Children. And obviously, if you want to be on some other time or got another topic that sounds interesting, let me know.
Cheers.
Will do.
Well, with that.
And thank you again.
Yeah, with that, we'll go ahead and say adios. And we'll talk again next time.
Goeienacht, alles. Tot ziens.
See you guys. Thank you.
Bon voyage.
A magnificent ending.
This has been another episode of the Warp Chatter Podcast. Thank you for listening.
Yes. Yes.
Shh. It's over. Don't fight it.